Previously, in Call of Cthulhu, Obelisk Obsession. Chapter 2, The Balance of Power. On the foggy morning of December 1st, the brouhaha of three large Junkers trimeters wakes up the Starkweather Moor Lexington camp in a startle. Heart-pounding, Eugene, Wilbur and Claudia, the most promptly dressed of the investigators, hastily exit their tents, polar gear barely on. The trio witnesses one of the aircrafts nosediving before them, flying insanely low, almost raising the mess hall and the antenna of the expedition. Wilbur lets out an admirative whistle.
Now that is one well-executed nap of the Earth. You can bet your bottom dollar that this pilot is one hell of a daredevil. Wouldn't be surprised if he flew during the Great War.
The tremoters touch down in a swirl of blowing snow and ski up to the camp. The rest of the expedition rushes up to the plains as men in heavy flying leathers tumble out of the screeching metallic hatches. The last person steps outside. A thin, older man presents himself as the leader of the group in a nearly flawless English, yelling over the dying engines of Junker tremoters.
My name is Professor Johann Meyer. I am the leader unserer Barsmeyer Falken Expedition. I appreciate your kind welcome and hope that our expeditions will equally benefit from our shared scientific talents. I bring greetings from the leaders of my expedition, and their salutations on your perseverance in the face of every difficulty. If there is anything which we can do to assist you, please approach myself or Dr. Professor Ur and state your needs. Our labor, supplies, and equipment are at your disposal, within reasonable limits, of course. Again, our thanks for your hospitality, our congratulations on your successes, and my hope for more to come. Do you have any questions for me, perhaps?
In the hesitant crowd, explorers stare at each other, searching in each other's eyes. Most of them still feel the phantom pain of the Great War, and Professor Meyer's speech seems almost too good to be true.
Have you uncovered anything interesting since your arrival on the ice?
Queries Veronica.
A good question, Ms. We've made a few significant geological discoveries, but nothing groundbreaking just yet. Our main group is camped inland from the shore of the Weddell Sea, quite rich in minerals, matter of fact. We also have an intermediate camp on the Central Ice Cap, but our team has yet to make consequential finds. Anything else? No? Well, then I will let my team set up camp.
Professor Moore and Miss Lexington briefly shake hands with the Germans. She seems eager to meet the newcomers. Moore is more hesitant.
You must be Professor Moore. I recognize you from the papers.
Meyer observes.
I see that we must speak of the hours. Our expedition uses Greenwich Mean Time in our clocks, while yours follows the proper time for your ships. Is it not so? How amusing that we are just 12 hours opposite. Our midnight is your midday, and so wider. This, I think, will help us both. Our parties can each work while the other sleeps. In this way we shall all be most effective. Don't you agree?
Nodding amicably, Professor Moore politely leaves the head of the Barsmeyer Falken expedition with Lexington and quickly directs himself toward the investigators.
I do not know about you, but I cannot shake off the feeling that having this German crew on site does not bode well for our discoveries. Let's see if we can make the most of this day before the Barsmeyer Falken teams start their shift in the evening. If Lady Luck is on our side, they might be too tired from the erection of their camp.
Giving a curt nod, Moore takes his leave. The investigators left to their own devices.
Well, if you will excuse me, I am going to attempt to commune with the odd creature resting in the dissection tent.
States ecstatically Claudia.
I'll join you, dear. You could use some company. I know how your rituals can be soul-draining.
Stutters old George, waddling fiercely through the snow with his cane to catch up with the occultist.
Bon, I guess it is just the three of us. I suggest we make way toward one of the hangars,
says Eugene, full of enthusiasm to Howard and Veronica.
Un moment, if you please. Monsieur Gore, the renowned antiquarian. Am I correct?
Echoes the suave voice of Professor Meyer.
Oui, monsieur. It is I.
Maya produces from his left hand a 10-inch loop of heavy copper tubing, similar to a knife.
ZC are heated almost red-hot by electricity, while Yun's small pump draws off Z resulting liquid through a varm tube. They will help you carve the ice nicely.
Maya explains.
Fine German equipment, and they do not risk so much damaging the finds beneath. Anyway, happy findings.
Merci, monsieur.
Replies curtly Eugene, handing the knife to Howard. Eugene and Veronica slowly make their way toward the hangar, pointed by the antiquarian, Howard in tow, smoking a cigarette. With the polar temperature, his lips are dry, crackled and caked with blood. The smoke feels like liquid spirit filling his lungs. He contains an urge to cough and overtakes his companions.
All right, let's try out this sucker.
Spits Howard, turning on the knife. The group makes a short work of a thick sheet of pink ice greedily hogging the metal carcass of the hangar. In a matter of minutes, a sturdy iron door drenched in water is revealed. Using all their strength, the investigators pry the door open in shrill sound, rattling their teeth. A distressing charnel and foul odor engulfs Eugene, Ronnie and Howard.
Good God, I may vomit.
Barely utters Veronica before moving away from the opening.
Fräulein, are you all right?
Resonates yet again the voice of Professor Meyer.
I saw you hunched over yourself. I couldn't simply leave you as is.
Looking back at the professor, Eugene notes a surreptitious look from Meyer into the hangar. As if he knew of the stench. As if he knew something more.
Putain, what do you want, Maya? Must you follow us so closely? Shouldn't you be with your team, setting up camp?
Offended by the vulgarity of the Belgian man, Meyer swells his chest, hot air puffing out of his nostril like a smouldering dragon.
How dare you address me this way? I merely vanted to help the young lady.
Hey, quit bickering. You should all take a look at this. It's a fine mess if you ask me.
Called back by Howard, who took the liberty of stepping in the hangar, Eugene, Veronica and Meyer carefully approach the door, peering into the shelter. The floor is covered with huge areas of pink ice dotted here and there with gobbets of frozen blood. A shape akin to a pentagram made of human innards circled ominously on the icy surface.
It is as I suspected.
Hisses the German before retreating and hailing Professor Moore, deep in conversation with Halperin, one of the pilots.
Herr Professor, would you be so kind as to come here?
Meyer says in a booming voice, easily heard by everyone nearby. When Moore arrives at the hangar, he is taken aback by the infernal scene unfolding in front of his eyes.
I has information I think that you should see. It may help you to understand what is here. Will you leave the excavation to your men and join me in my quarters for a short time?
Too stunned to decline, Moore silently acquiesces, following his German counterpart. Following the two academics from afar, Veronica half closes her eyes in a mischievous fold.
If you do not mind, gentlemen, I shall head to Herr Professor Meyer's tent. I can't possibly miss out on such a saucy and secret talk. Do not fret, I shall give you a complete account.
Do you think she'll have a hard time in the Barsmeyer-Falcon camp?
Ronnie? No. She could talk her way through Charon if she wanted to. What is this?
Crouching on the ground, Eugene grabs a small disc, no larger than a coin, a starfish form protruding on one side.
Well, this is new,
whispers the Belgian man, leaving the hangar to catch a better light to examine his find.
Wait for me, Eugene! Oh, God damn it!
Slipping on the frozen ground, Howard tumbles in a thud directly on the innards and the pentagram, wasting precious evidence.
Putain Howard!
On the other side of the base, almost strutting in the thick snow, Veronica makes her way through the Starkweather Moor Lexington camp before heading into German territory. She salutes a few burly men with a wink and smile. No one asks her anything. The young dilettante, in a moment of inattention, trips on a cable dragged by her ankle. A second later, The newly erected radio tower of the Barsmeyer Falcon expedition crashes into Starkweather Camp, missing the mess hall and dissection tent by a hair. Chastised by researchers and operating crew alike, Veronica rushes for her quarters, wishing the earth would swallow her whole. Poking their heads out of the dissection tent, George and Claudia stare at Veronica in utter disbelief.
Was that your granddaughter, George?
Says Claudia, muffling a laugh.
Most unfortunately, yes. The girl is an embarrassment to herself. And me. Did you know I had to take her out of my will?
Sighed George.
Yes, I know, dear. I guess the poor Germans will have to rebuild their little metal tower. All right. Back at it. Let's start the ritual, darling.
Burning sage in the tent, Claudia recites a prayer in an odd mix of Latin and Arabic. She circles the slab on which is resting the creature they excavated the day before. Staring at the ungodly monstrosity, George cannot help himself but wince. Several limbs akin to chitinous legs and small tentacles with orifices sprawl placidly on the ground. Huge bat-like wings oozing pus brush the occultist's feet. The body, almost comically grotesque, resembles a desiccated pine cone. Its head, a dented starfish vomiting gelatinous antennas. Taking a step aside, George grabs a nearby chair, turning his gaze to Claudia to forget the horrendous organic mass. Unsurprisingly, Claudia is already in trance. She does not move anymore. Her limb body peers over the creature, her eyes rolled back, exposing small reddish veins. She does not speak. She does not twitch. She is elsewhere. Darkness envelops her. Just her reality. In front of her, the creature stands fully raised, its starfish head now a gaping maw of sharp teeth and knives swallowing her whole. She floats. She floats under and over the Black Mountains. The peaks soon disappear behind her. An immense ice-shrouded city spreads out before Claudia. Incredibly massive, impossibly ancient, undeniably real. Its crumbled towers and labyrinthine streets extend as far as the eye can see. Everywhere is a maze of squared, curved, and angled blocks, tumbled ramparts and immense expanses of rubble embedded in glacial ice. The frozen sheet appears to be no more than 40 or 50 feet deep. Here and there, vast dark shapes beneath the surface tempt her imagination. Claudia flies for minutes over this gargantuan megalopolis before being hurled toward an empty valley with a singular, menacing dark tower. At full speed, she is thrown toward the black obsidian walls of the tower and passes right through it. In front of the occultist stands a wall of sinews and muscles and mucus and pus. A myriad of cavities riddles the living wall, in each of them twitching decapitated heads. Heads of humans, fresh and old, seals, penguins, creatures. Reality catches up with Claudia. The real world, as would say Marco, her dearest friend. She pukes on the floor of the tent, George launching his frail body toward her for support.
Darling, you are a mess. Somebody ought to clean this.
The old forensic doctor ushers Claudia outside of the tent, spotting the Sorensen brothers, two polar guides, not too far from him.
Friends, would you terribly mind helping me? Miss Claudia felt ill, and I am afraid she might have regurgitated her breakfast onto the floor. Be so kind as to mop it up, will you?
Claudia and George leave the forensic shelter without even waiting for the vexed response of the Sorensen brothers. The aging doctor, too worried by Claudia's health, fails to spot Howard walking past him. Howard, having noticed Ronnie's monumental mess in the German base, takes the opportunity of the chaos she caused to go and eavesdrop on Professors Meyer and Moore, eager to succeed where she failed. Stealing his nerves, Howard prowls stealthily into the Barsmeyer Falcon camp, deftly escaping the sights of the crowd. He stops at every tent, listening in. Soon enough, he hears the voice of Professor Meyer. Intrigued, Howard leans against the fabric of the tent.
I have asked you here, Professor, because I wish to show you a document that was intended for you from the beginning. How I acquired it is unimportant. It is yours now. If you will take it with you and read it through, I am sure you will understand. If you have further questions, I will answer them after I have slept.
Suddenly, Howard feels a gentle but firm hand landing on his shoulder. A tall and muscular man shaped like a wardrobe towers over the bootlegger, demanding that he leaves the premises. The wail of a man yells 4 names, and 4 more hulking figures arrive in an instant. He points to each of them, a position in the German camp accompanied by sharp orders. Though not fluent in German, Howard understands that returning to the Barsmeyer-Falcon settlement might prove difficult moving forward. Caught, he is but left with the option to retreat to the Starkweather Moor camp. From the corner of his eye, he spots Professor Moore, visibly shaken, heading straight as an arrow in flight toward his tent. The remainder of the day is spent by the American expedition around the digging sites, rushing to unearth as many discoveries as possible. A few members of the German contingent, those brave enough to keep on working, ask to lend a helping hand. Those that aren't rebuked by untrusting Starkweather crew members prove to be amicable and experts in their own field. The discoveries, mementos and keepsakes from the Miskatonic expedition, for the most part, are then promptly stored away. Veronica, having overcome the tide of embarrassment that had drowned her for hours, leaves her quarters as the Starkweather team hauls back their loot to the storage facilities. Looking for a quick gain and some self-gratification, she heads toward one of the digging sites, picking up one of the German ice cutters.
How dare you come on your lonesome to dig, after the embarrassment you have caused us today,
said George, fuming, who happened to be smoking his opioid pipe not too far away.
Grandpapa, please let me do this.
Oh no, you shall not. Hand this over, this instant.
Grabbing the knife and tearing a hole through the ice, George uncovers one of the tent of the Miskatonic expedition, shuffling past the frozen textiles. Old and frail, the good doctor misses a sheet of ice on the ground, propelling him headfirst into the key evidence, ruining it in the process.
By Jove and all the saints!
Oh, Grandpapa!
Lifting his head, he sees a frozen pool of blood. Expert in forensics, George understands in a flash that at least 1.2 gallons of blood have gushed all over the place, as if someone or something extracted every single ounce of blood from their victim.
Roni, dearest, I think it is best if we make for the mess hall.
On her side, having recuperated from her daunting séance, Claudia heads out to seek an interview with Professor Moore. She is met by the plump and rosy Dr. Green.
Ah, Miss Eddie. The professor has asked me to guard his tent. He does not want to be disturbed.
Hush.
I beg your pardon?
You heard me. Shush, hush. Now let me see more. We are partners in this expedition, though my name may not be in the papers. Now shoo.
Never have I felt so insulted.
There is a first time for everything, good doctor. Also, it seems like someone vomited all over your dissection tent.
Someone what?
Green rolls away from the professor's quarters, heading to the dissection tent, heart throbbing at the idea that someone might have ruined his formidable discoveries. Bearing a look of satisfaction, Claudia enters. The professor seems absorbed by a leather-bound document. Peering over the shoulder of a blissfully unaware Moore, Claudia remarks that the text is a handwritten manuscript. She clears her throat.
Oh, Miss Eddie. Apologies I didn't hear you come in.
Quite all right, Professor. I was wondering if I could have a word with you, perchance.
Well, I am done with my reading, and I do have a good 30 minutes before radio transmitting our findings to the world.
It's a trifle, really. Just 2 little points that I wish to raise with you. First, we cannot work with the Germans, As an associate in this expedition, I cannot condone working with them.
I see the Great War is still fresh in your mind, as it is in mine. I was dispatched in the Marne, you see, but we shouldn't give in to stereotypes, Miss Eddy. That would be unbecoming of us.
You misunderstand me, Professor. We should tolerate them, and at the very least be on our guard. They will start excavating soon enough, and who knows what they will steal for themselves.
Herr Meyer assured me that all findings would belong to us. They merely want to help. The Germans are more interested in surveying the land for resources. That said, I do not fully trust them myself. As you say, we should stay on our guard.
Claudia sees frowns of worry overcoming Moore.
Are you all right, Moore?
I have learned,
He says,
something fantastic. I do not know whether or not to believe it. I no longer trust myself. It seems impossible, but answers a number of questions that have plagued me for some time.
The professor hands over the manuscript to Claudia.
This is an account written by my one-time friend, William Dyer, who was part of the rescue party of the Miskatonic expedition. He disappeared in Hawaii earlier this year. He had stayed at the base camp closer to the Ross Sea and did not make the climb with Professor Lake. It is an account far different than what was communicated to the world back then. He writes about finding the bodies of the murdered men and about, other things. Fantastic things. I don't want to say too much until you've read it for yourself. Judge it with unbiased eyes, so to speak. Tell me whether you think it is genuine. Tell me if it was written by a madman or by one who was sane. It's Dyer's work. I've read his papers too often to mistake the style. But
He stops.
look the book over, if you please.
Claudia grabs the book, unbinds it, and starts sweeping the text with her eyes. Dyer's tale and historical accounts agree substantially, up to the point where the rescue party lands at Lake's camp. In his account, however, the party finds the camp in great disarray, much as it was found by Moore's group, but with the cruelly murdered bodies of dogs and men still scattered about the camp in hideous display. That the party was murdered was never in any doubt. The identity of the murderer was uncertain, most likely being Gedney, the missing student. Dyer and Danforth, a graduate student part of the expedition, flew several flights over the area in search of Gedney but found nothing. They then lightened a single plane and flew over the mountains through the nearest pass. On the far side of the range they found not a barren plateau, but the incredibly ancient remains of an immense city, uninhabitable for geologic epochs. Dyer maintains that the city was built not by men, but by creatures similar in appearance to Professor Lake's Old Ones or Elder Ones, and that the murders were done not by Gedney, but by the 8 perfect specimens removed from the cave by Lake's party. They find Gedney's body, preserved and carried as if for later examination. After examining the city for several hours and being chased by unfathomable creatures, they escape the city by sheer dumb luck. Danforth and Dyer conclude that existence of the Elder Ones and their city is something that should be kept from the world, lest they loose horrors that cannot be controlled. They pledge to keep the secret and persuade the others in the rescue party to stay silent about what they know as well. Only the advent of the Starkweather Moor expedition, with its avowed intent of exploring the high plateau, has forced him to break his silence in the hopes of warning them away.
That is positively fascinating, Professor,
says Claudia, lifting her head from the book.
It adds to what I was just about to ask you. I have carried a séance with the beast, creature, thing, in the dissection tent. I saw a sprawling city, a black tower and a wall of muscles. I am convinced we have to go there. This document is not the rambling of a madman, Professor. It is proof that there is more beyond the mountains. We must go. Go without Acacia. Without the Germans. Now.
Very well. You have given me much to think about, Miss Eddy. I shall consider your request with utmost care.
The endless winter sun of Antarctica shines bright over the mess hall by the time the investigators head for dinner. Inside the sprawling tent, the leaders of the expedition relay the findings and accounts of the day. Acacia Lexington is concluding her transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen, the discoveries made on camp today have bolstered my spirits, and with the newly established partnership between the Lexington and the Barsmeyer-Falcon expeditions, I believe it is time that we flew over the Miskatonic Mountains.
She leaves the station, a smirk on her face as she passes by Moore, who picks up the microphone.
I have nothing to report just now,
he says.
I'll transmit later after I've had a chance to, review the night's reports. Everyone is well. We'll, transmit again tomorrow. We will attempt to fly over the mountains soon enough. The pilots believe that we can outfit our planes for exploration within a full day. Moore out.
As Moore puts back the microphone, static comes through the receiver of the radio station. The loud voice of Starkweather blares across the hall.
Good Lord, Moore!
He exclaims.
As soon as my back is turned, you invite strangers to dinner. I must say that I don't like the idea of letting those Johnny-come-latelys share the spoils. I've had my fun up here and I'll be seeing you soon. We'll whip things into shape together. I should be at the bottom of this little hill tonight. Get the Enderby ready, on the double. I want a bloody plane to bring me back to camp by dawn. Starkweather out.
Excited at the potential prospect of reaching beyond the imposing mountains, explorers and researchers alike speculate excitedly about what they might find on the other side before retreating to their quarters. Soon, only our little group of investigators is left in the mess hall. One after the other, they share and discuss the events of the day. The almost ritualistic murder site, the dreadful séance held by Claudia, the mishaps of Ronnie, the Dyer manuscript, and how Dyer and Danforth saw horrors beyond their comprehension. The group soon reaches the conclusion that travelling beyond the Massif will be crucial in understanding what happened to the Miskatonic expedition. It is close to midnight when they exit the mess hall and head toward their respective quarters. Except Howard. The accounts of Claudia left Howard with his skin crawling in the back of his neck.
Well, I am not taking any chances. No, sir.
The bootlegger heads furtively toward the dissection camp, where he is greeted by the disgusting horror lying on the slab. Howard produces a heating knife and begins to saw through what he gauges must be the neck of the creature. He then drops the knife, grabbing a bone saw to finish off his handiwork. The starfish-shaped head plummets to the ground in a thud.
There, poor fucker.
On December 2nd, the investigators are up at dawn. The members of the Starkweather expedition are amassing themselves around the Enderby, who just came back from the mountains with James Starkweather. The explorer stands on the wing of the aircraft.
Sorry about the beastly hour, lads, but it's time for the big push. Lexington and the Huns have sprung one on us and joined up to beat us over the pass. They're no end of trouble. I'm sure all you fellows realise what we have to do, and we'll do everything a man can do. Our pilots tell me we can make it over to the far side and spend a couple of days prowling about on the ground. Of course, only 6 of you besides myself, the Professor, Dr. Green, and the pilots can come on the first trip. But I know you're all very keen for the job, so put your names in with the Professor. If we can, we'll send back a plane to bring some more of you along. With a bit of luck, we can make sure those boys and their little lady are watching our tail from their windscreen, eh?
Excuse me.
Yes, George, old chap.
Would it have hurt you to leave with someone during your solitary exploration of the peaks?
Well, I needed some time alone. drink it all in, so to speak.
Oh, Starkweather, you merely threw a tantrum because Acacia raised her voice at you.
Puffs Claudia. Starkweather turns red, seething.
I merely wanted to spend some time exploring on my own terms.
He hisses.
Did you at least plant a flag up there?
No, I forgot to bring the flag.
The crowd slowly disperses in a mix of laughter and excitement. As Starkweather jumps down from the wing of the Enderby, investigators hear in the distance the bell, Acacia Lexington's aircraft, lifting off for a quick flight check. Things start to move quickly around camp. Halperin, Sykes, and some of the technical staff begin sorting the equipment needed for the flight. All three camps spend the afternoon in a whirlwind of activity, finishing the survey of the caves, packing supplies for the voyage, and preparing aircraft for flight. Burnt by the preparation of the SS Gabriel, investigators spend their time checking all materials: food, oxygen tanks, climbing materials, weapons. Professor Moore soon lets the investigators know that they have been selected to go over the mountains. In the late afternoon, Eugene happens upon traces in the snow behind the dissection camp. The tracks lead to the mountains. The imprints are oddly shaped, as if a starfish had crawled its way through the snow. Not wanting to risk his life, Eugene decides to keep this information for later and heads toward one of the intact dig sites, where he finds another oddly shaped organic creature. Green and Moore arrive at the location shortly thereafter to help out Eugene bring the beast into the dissection tent. Once inside, Green gasps profoundly.
Someone decapitated the starfish-shaped limb?
Within minutes, an emergency town hall is held by Starkweather in the middle of the snow.
It seems we have a thief in our midst. If you ask me, my money is on the Huns, and that wench of Lexington. I will let the people remaining at Lake Camp take care of this sorry business. The Sorensen will take charge of the matter at hand. Nothing can distract us from getting beyond the mountains.
As soon as Starkweather finishes, the Americans hear a harsh landing close to the German camp. The Bell just landed from its test flight. Out of the Bell's hatch storms a furious Lexington.
How dare you, James? How dare you poison us, you swine! As soon as we are back in the United States, you can expect papers from my lawyers.
What are you on about, you mad cow?
Our oxygen was tampered with. My pilot, Kyle, is almost dying.
To these words, George heads straight toward the airplane. Kyle Williams lies against the wheel of the Bell, his lips blue, his face a putrid green tinge. The doctor quickly establishes that he has indeed suffered a form of intoxication, but that he will have promptly recuperated with a good night's sleep. Everyone doubles down on the oxygen tanks, ensuring that all of them are clean and untampered with. Thankfully, it seems like only the tanks in the Bell have been toyed with. Once having thoroughly combed all the equipment that will make the journey through the peaks, investigators enjoy a little bit of rest in their quarters. Only Howard and Claudia seem to be preoccupied. The bootlegger nervously chews on his cigarette. For some reason, he cannot shake the feeling that the starfish head vanished on its own. He hunts through the settlement for a canister of fuel, which he finds with ease before making his way to the dissection tent. He catches the eyes of George, Green, and Eugene, who race to him in an instant.
Howard, are you barking mad? What are you doing?
Merely taking safety measures. I think these findings should stay hidden from the world, indefinitely. If you ask me, we've only experienced weird crap ever since arriving here, and the root cause is in this tent. By the way, do you know if we have some dynamite lying around?
Mr. Hammermeister, this is the find of the century, nay, the millennia. I cannot possibly let you destroy such a fine specimen.
If I may, gentlemen, we could probably put dear Howard's trouble to rest by putting the specimen in quarantine. After all, Mr. Hammermeister does make a good point, so to speak. We do not know what kind of germs these creatures would carry, perhaps even toxins, It could actually be one of the most rational explanation for the gore and madness we have uncovered here.
Howard ponders the words of George for a second.
You're not half wrong, Doc. Suit yourselves, but I want to see you lock them away.
On the other side of the base, Claudia enters Acacia Lexington tent.
Acacia, dearest, I believe it is about time we had a talk, you and I.
Must we?
Oh, yes. And you will listen to me. Our family connections go back several generations, and your attitude has been quite detrimental to these. Matter of fact, your attitude has put this whole expedition in jeopardy. Frankly, you act like a spoiled little girl who believes James Starkweather to be source of all her misery. You raced out of your bell, screaming bloody murder without a second thought. It is not the first time, mind you. Don't you ever stop and think, what is that all about?
My attitude and my relationship with Starkweather are none of your concerns, you lunatic.
Come, Acacia. You can do better than this. It is love, isn't it?
Lexington bites her lips. Small spots of blood bloom under her teeth.
Yes, Miss Eddie, it is love. There, I said it. James was my first love. I was 16. We hid our relationship from the world for years. He was such a sweet man. He was about to propose, you know. I found an engagement ring in his drawer. The same day he tore my heart asunder. He confessed to cheating. I was beside myself.
Good. Let it all out, Acacia. Your secret will die with me. In the meantime, would you be a dear and put your fragile ego to the side? We are on the verge of groundbreaking discoveries, and we cannot bicker amongst ourselves.
After consoling Lexington, Claudia swiftly heads to the quarters of Starkweather.
James, may I have a word?
Absolutely, Miss Eddie. What can I do for you?
I know everything about you and Miss Lexington.
A shadow overcomes Starkweather's face.
I will ask you to leave now, Miss Eddie. You have never seen me angry, and I wager it is something that would be all too terrifying for you.
Oh, please, spare me the threats. James, for the love of everything that is good and holy, go to her. The woman is still madly in love with you. And despite your despicable adultery behavior, you clearly have feelings for her.
How dare you accuse me of adultery? I never once cheated on her.
That is not what she told me. Come now, James. You can tell me everything.
Starkweather rushes to Claudia, grabbing her by the throat. Claudia gasps for air, clawing at his iron grip.
You want to know the truth? Her father forced me to lie to her. I wasn't good enough, you see. I was never going to be good enough for her. Had I not done as he said, he would have destroyed me and my family.
The explorer pushes Claudia aside. She falls on the floor, nearly spraining her wrist.
And even beyond the grave, her father can still exert influence. Let's leave it at that.
No. I want to know.
You should really stop pushing your luck, Claudia. You're far from ready to hear this.
Fine. But you owe me for your fiendish behavior. Set your bloody quarrel with the woman aside. I am sick and tired to see you put an expedition I have financed in utter jeopardy. Do you hear me?
Yes. I shall contain myself. I do apologize for my outburst of violence. You caught me unawares. It shan't happen again.
The occultist promptly retreats to her own tent, pain throbbing through her throat. She falls in a deep slumber, dreaming of a massive city.